And as I said before, the work has already started when it comes to the May 27 budget. We will also, 26 budget, we will also deliver for Tasmanians.
Next speaker, please. Honourable Shadow Deputy Leader. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. It's always interesting when the Premier presents himself at the lectern, and he did just say then he apologised for being a little late, and he looked a little flustered. And flustered is a high-energy presentation, but I remember the opening moment of estimates now just a short 2 weeks ago, and he looked less than flustered. And when asked the first question in estimates, there was this massive sigh and a rounding of the shoulders, and it's like, whoa, I've got to get through this week. And it's a bit of an indication of the feeling of this government right now. The intention and the purpose of estimate scrutiny is for members of this place to be able to ask questions, to seek clarification around the commitments they're making in the budget, to understand the shaping of the budget, what they're looking to deliver, and what's in and what's out. And unfortunately, as has become the case, just because something prior to a budget being prepared and when a budget is delivered and when you receive the papers, this government has an art of not making things clear. This government has an art of trying to hide the full intentions of what they're doing, which doesn't always align with what they've told people they will do. And so it takes often intense and repetitive questioning to seek to get answers and to seek to get honesty out of this government. And some of my personal experiences through estimates I want to share this afternoon in having to ask multiple questions over multiple rounds of questioning to actually get someone to tell the truth and actually answer a question. And it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be so hard that members of our community, when given commitments in writing, can actually trust that. It shouldn't be so hard that when members of our community hear our government make a commitment that they can believe it. But it is. It is so hard. And not only through the period of estimates 2 weeks ago, through GBEs, through question time and through public presentation of this government's position, everything this government does, they make it hard. Now, the Premier just rose to his feet and he talked about this budget and this current government creating certainty for the community. Well, that's a laugh. He talked about responsibility. That's also a laugh. He talked about accountability. And one of the things that was uncovered in this chapter of estimates was the fact that there is almost zero accountability required by this Premier, the leader not only of Tasmania but the leader of the government, to seek and create accountability through his ministers. We have seen multiple examples. Perhaps it would be excusable if just once something didn't quite go right. But when there is a repetition of behaviour and it becomes a personality and a culture of this government to not feel like it is necessary to do the right thing, and for the Premier not to feel like it is his responsibility to hold his ministers to account, we know that there's a serious problem in this government. Now, I want to reflect on two matters that became very evident throughout estimates, something in fact that we prosecuted for further clarification today in question time, and it's the matter of the Premier holding his ministers to account through either the caretaking conventions when in an election, their ministerial codes of conduct, or in fact holding to account to their responsibilities under acts and laws in Tasmania. In estimates, it was confirmed that TasRacing used taxpayers' funds and resources to deliver messages from this government out into the public realm, to publicly promote positions of this government. Now, we know that's not okay, and we know that the Premier, who's not in the chamber now, also knows that it's okay, because through the period of time in estimates when his minister was being asked the questions and through questions today, the Premier didn't have an answer. Now, if the Premier actually believes what he said on his feet just a moment ago, that he believes in accountability, then he must and he will immediately launch an investigation into what happened with the TasRacing and TasInsure communications through the election. We know that in my own electorate of Bass, the commitment that was made by the Sports Minister to the North Launceston Footy Club that they would have $100,000 if the Liberal government was re-elected to ensure their plans for the future, the government just decided, because the footy club spoke to somebody else, we're not going to give that money anymore. Now, the budget should be delivered on the promises that were committed to. There should be funds. There should be $100,000 in the budget for the North Launceston Footy Club to secure their future, a future that they're being created or pushed away from, a home that they've had for over 100 years. But when you can't find things simply in the budget because the Treasurer and his fellow ministers find ways to not make it easy to see and seek clarity within the budget, then you've got to ask questions. And when the answers are that actually I wanted to give the North Launceston Footy Club $100,000, but when they stood with Labor I decided that they didn't really want it anymore and they've withdrawn it from the budget, then that's just not okay. And the Premier must deal with that type of behaviour. Ministers are expected to deal fairly, without bias and without regard to irrelevant information, and that's not happening, and that's on the Premier. Now, in my own scrutiny in estimates, there were multiple times in some of my portfolio areas where it required diligent questioning to actually get someone to focus on what the ask was and then to give an honest response. And I think in an area not more important than the primary industries. Now, the primary industries minister, I think people would say he's doing a pretty good job. He's working hard and wants to deliver for farmers, for fishers around our state. But the problem is with nice people that try to do a good job is that when there are specifics and important information that needs to be truthful, that's when it really matters. That's actually what reveals the true core of a person. So in our primary industries estimates, there were lots of questions, not surprisingly, given the makeup of the minority parliament, around salmon, around florfenicol, around lots of different issues in the community. And these questions aren't always asked by everyone because of the particular subject matter. They're actually asked for integrity. I had to ask, through the minister, members of the government multiple times when they first knew that the industry intended to use florfenicol. And blunt-faced to me, the person replying said, I didn't find out till July. We have correspondence between the government and industry in February indicating their intention to use florfenicol. Now, this is not a salmon issue. This is not a wreck fishing issue. It's not a rock lobster issue. This is an honesty issue. If this government can't be honest about the fundamentals of the issues that are before them, how can the community trust anything? If this government know that there are things that are happening in our community that misrepresent critical information and they don't act, how can the community trust them? So when members of this place ask questions through estimates, it is the most fundamental expectation that they will act quickly, without too much fuss or bother, and give an honest answer. There were also questions in the primary industry space. NRE is a massive department. They have got so many responsibilities and so much areas of work, but there are so many people doing a lot of work with few resources. There are a number of teams in NRE right now that used to be resourced to 8 or 9 people that are working that workload with 1 or 2 people. Now, when those questions were asked in the exchanges with estimates as well, in terms of looking to future budgets, yes, there was a recognition that many departments are under pressure, they're overwhelmed, and there are challenges with the culture within that department because of the workload and the expectations. But they said, oh no, that's okay, we're going to put more funding in the budget in the future. Well, way to make your budget look good, Treasurer. Way to make the Tasmanian community feel like you know what you're doing as Treasurer when you say that there is a pathway to surplus, when you actually withdraw funds in the future years to make it look good so you think you can get to a surplus. But in fact, we know that when the real budget comes out in May, you will be required, and we will hold you to account to make sure that you put credible figures within the budget that show a true representation of the position right now and a true indication of how you intend to have money in the budget. And in May, you won't be able to say honestly likely that there is a pathway to surplus unless you do something drastic and the community are concerned that you will either do one of two things. You will continue to misrepresent the position of the finances of Tasmania, or you will take drastic action in an unexpected way that will harm individuals, harm workplaces and impact people's jobs. Because we know for years, the Premier, again just on his feet before, he thanked the Treasury. We all acknowledge and thank the Treasury. But if only the Premier and the ministers listened to the Treasury, because for years, through the fiscal sustainability report, there have been alarm bells ringing about the need for this government to take corrective action. And the government continue to ignore the advice of Treasury, or in fact on some matters like Tassinsure don't even ask for the advice of Treasury, and we find ourselves in our situation right now. We know that there are organisations like the North Launceston Footy Club that have been written to by this government and have had things withdrawn. Well, it's not just sports club, it's not just organisations that dare to deal and talk to other people across the chamber. There are really critical, again, in my environment space, which crosses over with the primary industries in NRET, there are critical organisations working on behalf of Tasmanians that have not had a fair representation or understanding of their commitments, which impact employees, impact contract certainty for organisations, and that impacts their ability and their livability in Tasmania, their commitments to mortgages, their commitments to families, to their kids. So when an organisation as neutral as NRMs in Tasmania are told a commitment that no funds to NRMs will be reduced, redirected or impacted in writing before an election and before a budget is handed down, but then in estimate scrutiny when asked particular questions about the allocations to NRMs, they were told that there wouldn't be a reduction. And then I was told that, oh no, it's going back to a pre-bonus level of $250,000 a year. The deeds for NRMs haven't been $250,000 a year since 2013. Since 2013, the base deeds for NRMs have gone from 250, 350, 467, 544. So how can this government again be honest about the commitments that they're making? What they're doing is seeking to misrepresent positions to organisations and then misrepresent the real financials in the budget to make it look better than it actually is. And for people like our three NRMs in Tasmania, it's not good enough where their funding is coming to an end. They believe they've got commitments, but the government isn't clear in communicating with them about what they can actually do with their core funding. And it's like in the area of primary industries, commitments that are made to great people in this place where they make and prepare plans for future seasons around something that is core to increasing the farm gate value for farmers around irrigation. And there's two matters that I prosecuted in primary industries scrutiny with the Minister around two different but equally important matters with irrigation. One is the Tamar scheme, which the Minister and the people accompanying him tried to retell a story that is well understood, that they weren't able to secure enough water allocation, water sales with farmers, so we needed to change an instrument in this place to get industrial water to be able to pull water through for farmers. We know that. What we know is and what we need is for the government to act and act fast to ensure that the farmers that are preparing can have access to that water. So we want a commitment. The Minister has said that he's going to take the lead between NRE and RecVit, and he is going to drive an outcome and deliver the water for Tamar farmers. Well, they want to see that sooner rather than later, because otherwise they'll start withdrawing the money that they have in that at the moment with the allocations that they've indicated, and they'll start making decisions to look after water on their own properties, which is good for some but not for everybody. So, Minister, I know you've made a commitment to act, but you must. In the other place with irrigation that you must act is in Winnaleah. Now, initially, early in estimates, there was a suggestion that a meeting had been set up between yourself and the Winnaleah irrigators. I trust that that's going to happen. I trust that it's going to be a productive meeting and that will advance the needs of those farmers, because for 2 irrigating seasons now, they have been promised that they would have community management and that there would be a genuine desire by Tas Irrigation to work with those farmers to find a solution for community management of their scheme. Now, they've been waiting for 2 seasons. before the next season comes in, by the end of this financial year. Again, Minister, I know that you have committed to bringing this in and that you say that it is possible to have community management. It is viable for the Winalea farmers to have community management. That must happen as a matter of urgency because they have been waiting for seasons. In another area of my portfolio responsibility, which is critical, equal to fishers and farmers, which is critical to the future of Tasmania, is innovation AI and our digital economy. Now, this government talks a big game about innovation, about its commitment to the digital economy, but talking a big game isn't action on the ground. One of the first sets of questions that I asked about in estimates of this government was about the governance, about the support provided across departments and across the government for the use of AI. For people to use AI well supported, well understood in an environment where there are clear guidelines and frameworks, it can be really useful for us in Tasmania. It can be something that can, when people are at the centre of every idea and every thought, it can increase efficiency, it can increase productivity, and it could, if done well, increase the experience of people living in Tasmania. But if it's just used for quick gimmick, get-out-of-jail-free cards like we know that the Premier used to prepare his piece of legislation for TasInsure, then that undermines the credibility of what can be done for Tasmanians. So I trust that this government is providing equal access and equal training and equal understanding of people in government on how they can use AI, how it can deliver for Tasmanians and where it remains human-centred and it keeps the livability and the lifestyles and the affordability of Tasmanians up front and centre with the decisions that they make about that. But the other thing that was important to prosecute in estimates and that is well on the record from TasICT is around the digital roadmap for Tasmania. And I want to put on record some comments from TasICT because if the Minister and the Government are not aware of their concerns, I will now put it on the record so that they are, because our state, we've got some incredible people. We've got creative and innovative people that do things that matter in Tasmania, that make a difference in Tasmania, but we've got people here that are operating all around the world, that are leading the world in their innovation and that are doing amazing things. So we need to make sure that there's a clear roadmap for investments and a clear roadmap for opportunity in Tasmania. And TasICT, Tasmania's tech industry, and I'm quoting them now, is calling for leadership from the Tasmanian government in AI adoption and tech innovation, because otherwise it risks a damaging decline in the state's workforce productivity. In its annual survey, TasICT members reported optimism about business conditions, but warned more needed to be done to encourage Tasmanians to be confident with technology and consider tech careers. TasICT CEO Russell Kelly said that Tasmania's tech firms were more optimistic than similar surveys taken nationally. 34% of respondents expect revenue growth above 10% in 2025 and 45% plan to hire staff steady with last year. However, consistent with similar national surveys, retraction in government spending on technology has a huge flow-on effect to tech firms. Tech jobs are productive jobs. They can help businesses get a competitive edge and help government provide services more cheaply. Our sector urges the state government to have a digital roadmap for improving digital services in Tasmania. Mr Kelly said that the survey of members taken in September 2025 showed support for the adoption of AI, cyber security and skills shortages in tech. They were the major issues facing the sector. Tasmania's tech sector currently employs 11,200 people. There's been a 3.2% growth and adds $1.1 billion to the state economy. With Deloitte Access Economics predicting 21,000 additional jobs could be added by 2035 in its Digital Pulse report prepared by the Australian Computer Society. Crucially, 81% of the TasICT members, almost all of them, consider that the state government is not doing enough to advance the digital economy and it's not improving compared with previous years. Mr Kelly said that more than 86% of TasICT members were using AI in some form in their businesses, with a further 7% researching adoption. Mr Kelly said this coming state government budget needs to supercharge spending on technology and provide a roadmap to make Tasmania a smart state. Tasmania has great potential to pioneer science, creative industry and sustainable tech, but we are moving slowly at a time when the arrival of AI is changing the world at breakneck speed. The risk for Tasmania is if we wait too long, if we try too slow at creating these opportunities, we're going to miss the boat and we're going to be left behind. Tasmania could be and should be at the forefront of these areas, and more needs to be done from this government to deliver on that. In the area of energy and renewables, it would be expected that we would prosecute issues around Marinus, around North West Transmission, around our renewable investments around Robben Island and Whaleback Ridge and others across Tasmania. But one of the areas that I wanted to really focus on was around energy poverty, because it's real for Tasmanians. Cost of living pressures are real for Tasmanians. Tasmanian families are choosing to turn their power off in winter, to sit under rugs or go to sleep before the sun goes down because they fear that they can't afford, or they can't afford the power that's required to look after them through winter. Tasmanian families are hurting. We prosecuted questions around the number of Tasmanians that were having their power disconnected because they couldn't keep up with the increases in their bills. Tasmanians are having their power disconnected, and it's taking a long time and a lot of costs to have it reconnected when they're already under financial pressure. Now, I acknowledge there is a lot of good programs out there that are being delivered by the government. They are being creative about how that they can wrap their supports around Tasmanians, but more needs to be done. Off the back of the position of hydro having the 2 toughest years in terms of dry conditions, there won't be a renewable energy dividend for Tasmanians this year, and that was something that came in with great fanfare from this government. When asked to provide the modelling from hydro about future years and the climatic conditions to see how that would impact profits and therefore impact renewable energy dividends for Tasmanians, there were no answers. Hydro is a modelling entity. It's a climate weather entity. It relies on water. They must know, the government must know, the minister must know what the future years look like and what the impact will be continuing to have on our Tasmanians. We need to do more to support Tasmanians who are in real energy poverty. They are the families at the centre that need our full attention and need to understand that the government continues to care with greater regard. We talk about budget mismanagement, and we talk about the areas where there needs to be savings, but so often with this government it's poor decision making or pauses on decision making or errors in decision making, which is costing Tasmanians greatly. And off the back of the Marinus decision, with full fanfare, you would expect that the works undertaken at Tarraleah and the projects being proposed at Sathana with pumped hydro would be full gas going forward. But there was a delay, and yes, I can understand that there would be a delay in terms of reconsidering a position, but when lengthy delays happen in decision making, the Tarraleah project was put on pause for a period of time, which cost millions of dollars in terms of the consideration and tens of millions of dollars in the for the outcomes of the capital costs for Tarraleah by that pause. They're the sorts of places where Tasmanians are feeling the pressure of additional costs in the budget. We know that the Energy Minister was responsible for delivering a power deal for Bell Bay Aluminium. It is a 10-year power deal that they need. They had years, admittedly on their own records, they had been working on this for 6 years. They'd been in deep negotiations with Bell Bay Aluminium and couldn't get it across the line. Now, we know that there will be work done in a committee with the feds around creating an outcome for Bell Bay Aluminium. They've given themselves a 12-month extension. There were questions asked in estimates about their confidence to actually deliver an outcome in the next 12 months. When you reverse engineer the needs for Bell Bay Aluminium and the workers on that site to have certainty with their future and with the productions on that site, there needs to be well in advance of that 12 months a commitment for this government to be able to deliver the power deal and the future for Bell Bay Aluminium. It's like the uncertainty at Liberty Bell Bay. The uncertainty at Liberty requires a team effort to completely different issues, but critical issues in the electorate of Bass, critical issues for the workers in that local area, and most importantly, critical issues for many, many hundreds of small businesses across Tasmania that rely on both of those sites and many of our major industrials in Tasmania. Now, in the portfolio area of parks, NRET for me covers primary industries, environment and my parks area and water. And there are massive pressures in that department. There are concerns, and I raised concerns but didn't get clear answers about the investment in supporting the people. There have been surveys. There will be outcomes of those surveys tabled in responses of the culture of that department. I hear many times brought to me concerns from individuals that work in the area, from the unions that support the people that work in the area, and just in my conversations with fishers and farmers around the area of the concerns of the pressure, the concerns of the resourcing in NRET. And if we want to look after our environment, the quality of our water, we want to look after our fishers and farmers, we want to look after our world-renowned parks, we've got to make sure that the people that are doing the work are looked after. Two areas of concern for me in parks that were prosecuted in estimates were the Pioneer Dam. There is a beautiful community of people that love to do the most classic of Tasmanian activities and camp in pretty fundamental capacity, camp at Pioneer Dam. There was a concern with the dam wall. There is an outcome of some engineering reports. The Minister, Minister Daigan, although not clear, but the Minister did say that he's looking to facilitate the return of those activities to Pioneer Dam. I trust that the Minister will maintain that his word is good, and that although complex, he will support the people that love camping at Pioneer Dam to again, after the wall is removed and the waters are released above the wall, that there is a return to that activity at Pioneer Dam. Similarly to another great activity that all Tasmanians love is mountain biking, and at Kate Reid Reserve, closer into Launceston, there is an opportunity to increase infrastructure into the Kate Reid Reserves to provide a trailhead for the mountain bike trails in that area, and in doing so provide roadage and open up thousands of housing opportunities across the South Prospect proposal. Now, asking questions in estimates around the department on how advanced the RIA is for Kate Reid Reserve and what impediments there are or what needs to be managed in order to be able to deliver on that. This is a critical piece of infrastructure that actually is at the centre of lots of challenges, and this is about a bit of an illustration of the challenges for this government. In one small area, there is the major highway, Highway 1, that bottlenecks at the Bunnings turn-off, completely unsafe in terms of how people exit off the highway down into the Bunnings area. And then you've got families under that roundabout that are trying to get their kids out and be healthy and get them into the Kate Reid Reserve. They've got to park their cars on the side of the highway on an underpass and get their kids up and over a fence into the Kate Reid Reserve. It's extraordinary what is required for families to go and recreate in that area. Now, there is a proposal here that can open up solutions for safe access to the mountain bike trails. With some lateral thinking from this government, could look to do more work to improve the safety of that highway coming out of Launceston going south when it turns off to Bunnings in the Youngtown area, and also could unlock thousands of homes for the South Prospect project and also lots of community facilities and activities. So in this parks area, a priority of focus on the proposal at Kate Reid Reserve, there have been commitments of consideration. A commitment to deliver on those outcomes would be welcomed by the community. So this budget, it again is like what's happened in previous years. is an attempt by this government to run a smoke and mirrors campaign. It's an attempt by this government to say there's a pathway to surplus when we know there's not. It's an attempt by this government to hide things where they'd made commitments and then they don't deliver on them. Something as simple as Flinders Island and the $320,000 that was promised to support them for the lights for their runway. They have correspondence, they're told that they're going to get it in the election, it's announced, and then it's not in the budget. And I love the language in the letters that this government use when they write to people that they've made commitments to. They say, you know what, sorry, it's an interim budget, although that's an excuse, but we may be able to find savings or we may be able to find allocations in the next budget. Who's going to believe that? Who's going to believe what the government says anymore when you write correspondence like that? Tasmanians, they deserve better. Tasmanians deserve to be able to trust their government. They expect a government that has integrity. They expect a government that is honest. They expect a government that actually stands up and delivers and takes action on the things that they say are important, not a government that just talks, puts things in writing, says I didn't really mean it, it doesn't really matter, has a premier that when their ministers do things that are